I remember the shirt. What do you call it? The thing where you can iron on the image onto the shirt in the middle. That's so cool that you left that there.
Iron on transfer.
Still backwards. You can reverse it. Is it so? Did book 5 come out before? Yeah, this is well before the TV show. I think I saw the TV show started in '98.
Honestly, there's a lot of this book is like the first, one of the few episodes I really do remember.
Did they get to the point where they were on the ship and everything? In the TV show?
No, because they interpreted a lot of the stuff differently. In fact, that was one of the things I was going to point out is when they're describing the disc that he has to retrieve from Chapman's office, the little
the Z-space transponder.
Yes.
Yeah. Not a disc, a Z-space transponder.
Well, but they describe it finally towards that point where they finally grab it as an actual disc, whereas before it was just something about the size of I think they said a grain of sand or something like that. And the initial image that I got was more of a diode type of shit, like a cube of some sort they were going to have to carry away. I'm just thinking, how is that thing going to awkwardly fit through a crack? And then I guess by that point in the writing, she was like, oh yeah, needs to be like a slit. So she made it a more disc-like shape. But in the show, they have this big ass handheld, those recorders that you can get that have the speakers off either side.
Yeah.
It's
got almost like Andalite eye stalks.
Almost. Because you can usually rotate them any kind of direction you want. But it was about that big, like a walkie-talkie, and it's got this big old CD sticking out of the top end. So it was still a disc, but it wasn't exactly the same. It wasn't the Yerk distress signal per se that they were doing.
That kind of does ring a bell now that you mentioned that. Were they an ant morph? Did they carry it out with ant morph?
No, they didn't do the ant morph or anything like that.
How did the TV show tackle it?
They combined a few different aspects of the other books in there. They had him go into the mall. They had Axe in there. They had him go butt nuts over Cinnabon. Which that was a whole scene. But then there was this part where they go into a pet store and that's where the lizard comes in.
Oh, I see.
Then there was while they're in the mall, I think Marco ends up morphing one of the security guards or trying to morph one of the security guards, and it
acquires him to calm him.
Yeah, he acquires him kind of secretly. The guard just kind of isn't paying attention, and he does kind of end up a little woozy or something, kind of sleepy looking, because Marco just kind of barely gently touches him,
creepy.
Yeah. But then he goes off to the bathroom. He's trying to change into him, and it warbles, and he doesn't quite morph right, and he reverts back, and he's sweating. He's like, oh shit.
Oh, that never happens. Well, first of all, they wouldn't. I think maybe way later on this might happen, but the Animorphs, as we know them now in book 5, welcome to the world's only Animorphs podcast.
Welcome, everybody.
They wouldn't just morph a human that way. They had enough trouble morphing dolphins,
Yeah. The whole sentience, I think, becomes an agreement point for them.
Although I do remember, we're going to have to see what that holds in the future, because I remember a book where there is a human morph on there. Book 5, Marco's first book.
Well, technically, we've already seen a human morph.
I guess that's right. Axe is here. That's the biggest change. I forgot how much they packed into these first 5 books. There's been no book so far that's nothing really happened.
No.
Do you think we're going to get to a point where, book,
filler book.
Yeah, filler book, There's got to be some of those in the 54, regular series. There's got to be some where it's not a lot happened, but this one is super eventful, man. We learned about Z-space for the first time.
Yes.
When Axe is explaining it, and he says...
Anti-space.
So basically they're trying to make a Yerk distress beacon.
Where imaginary numbers are real.
Zero space. The non-dimensional where faster than light travel... Oh, the non-dimension. The non-dimension. He says zero
faster
space.
Than light travel exists.
It's the opposite of true space, anti-reality.
where light space is actually the constant for the slowest speed you can go.
Yeah. Everything, it's opposite day, basically. Z-space is opposite day where everything's different.
That's why you can morph into an ant and an elephant.
Yeah. Supposedly that's where your I think they explain later that that's where your matter goes whenever you're small. Whenever you shrink, your matter has to go somewhere. I just throw it up into Z-space,
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Oh, snap. Spoiler alert. But this is cool. It's like, I feel like after this book, they come to the real Axe is like, maybe don't risk everybody's life just so that I can go home. Because that's the whole premise of this book, is that Axe wants to go home. And it kind of makes sense because the Animorphs are like, well, if Axe can get home and alert his cousins, because we know like all Andalites are cousins. We learned that from the last book. Unless
Aren't
they're
humans, though,
That's right, we're all related. Then if they go up there, then they can alert the Andalites. They can come back and save us sooner than the roughly 2 years that we've been given to hold off the Yeerks until then.
That's why I thought "what up, cuz" was always such a woke phrase.
That's exactly right. So we learned about Z-Space. We're trying to get that transponder. And that mall scene you mentioned, that was such a visual for me as a kid. It's funny, like, because I still read these books with a new eye,
Right.
like as if I'm reading it for the first time, but you just remember stuff as a kid. And that mall scene, whenever they all go to the mall and Axe is just freaking out because he tastes things for the first time.
Yeah.
That's like, that one always stuck in my head. That always seemed really fun.
Which I will give props to the TV show for at least capturing a lot of the zanier essence of that scene, like with especially in relation to Axe and his behavior and how, like a sore thumb, it just stuck out to everybody. And like, what I want to know though is like, how is Axe teleporting through all these people in the mall, basically? Because it's like they turn their head for an instant, and it's literally like cartoon fashion. He's down the escalator, and they're having to like swim through people to get to him, but he's already down there putting on a display, lifting everything off of the cafeteria tables that he can find. Like,
He is
new flavor.
He is so far ahead of them all the time. I guess his human morph is like super fast.
Maybe it's his physique. He's slim and able to squish through like Rachel or something. I don't know.
It could also be that he has no respect for personal boundaries,
That too, yeah. He's probably just like charging through people and walking stiffly like, I smell food.
Yeah. And then people see him coming and they probably part because they're like, all right, who's this weirdo running through the mall? It's a good thing he didn't get captured and tased. I don't think tasers existed whenever they were in the mall, whenever this book was written.
I think they did. They just weren't like as common. Like, it was definitely a thing by that point, but they weren't like standard issue for police or security. I think they still had like physical clubs at that point.
There's one part. It's in chapter 6. Whenever Axe is like running through, Marco gives himself away, I think, to the other people when he screams "run." Because let's see here, because the controller cop that just drew his gun from his holster. Like, Marco's right next to him because Marco heard the controller cop say "Andalite" in a frightened whisper. And then it says, Marco says, "I quickly turned and looked at him. Only a controller would recognize an Andalite. The controller cop drew his gun from his holster. 'Run!' I yelled at Axe." And so he kind of gave himself away, don't you think? Or maybe the cop was like, "Oh, he's just a kid rooting for this, for this like criminal guy running through the mall." This crazy dude.
And I think right before that, to describe it as they didn't understand why the controller or the cops weren't necessarily worried about them. They thought maybe they were just running in front of them to like be zany kids or something. Yeah. But I think it was just like, it would be a natural reaction if you were to look back and see that the person chasing you down, basically, whether they know that they're chasing you or not, is about to pull a gun out on you. You're like, book it.
That would have been a big end. That would have been a unceremonial end to Axe's life. Just get shot in a human morph at the mall.
At least he would probably have a small window of time in which to morph back to Andalite.
There you go. Fine. Yeah, he'd be fine in a crowded mall full of regular humans as an alien. Fine comparatively, I guess.
So one of the first wonderings that I had about this book, I wonder,
Max wonders,
if Axe can integrate clothes into his human morph. Like, he can start as his base Andalite, not have to put on the clothes as an Andalite, but morph into a human with clothes already on, even if they do have to be the skin type morph clothes. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that the rest of the Animorphs could also do that, but with their morphs? Could they, like, say, give Rachel a little hat that's skin tight to wear that makes her look like Dumbo? Could they give her
when she's an elephant morph?
Yeah. Or whenever she becomes the bear, give her the red shirt to morph so she looks like Winnie the Pooh, you know?
Or, a dog, get a nice little dog sweater on when they morph into a dog.
Let
it's
him
just
look like
cute.
Air Bud, give him the vest. Yeah.
I think that...
Dude, Marco's totally got to put on a tie and look like Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong, that would be great. I feel like... And since Axe is an Andalite, he has morphing skills that the others are unable to
access.
Unable to access.
At least.
Because, I feel like if they could combine DNA the way Axe did with the human morph, that it would be cool to get like all these different predators and like just acquire certain parts of them. Yeah, like this crazy like ultimate, this like UFC version of a fighting morph, like makes this MMA version.
Creature. Oh my gosh. That would be really sweet, though. Another thing that struck me as odd, which as we get further into the series, it becomes a little more apparent probably why, but it was just kind of odd, especially with this being the first book. I remember thinking about it as a kid, like, how did these aliens know English? And like reading back through the first 5 books so far now, like even from the very first book, the Hork-Bajir, who don't normally like speak like we do.
Yeah. They're like
already incorporating English specifically into their speech.
They seem to be the only ones that mix. They have like a Spanglish thing going on. They have their Hork-Bajir language plus the English language. Yeah. I had that thought about Axe. Mm-hmm. Like it's weird that Andalites speak English.
Yeah,
because like
in thought speech, and whenever he becomes a human for the first time, he's already able to like form words. Like, why was it English that he was able to speak immediately? Like, how did he know how to form those words?
Well,
why wouldn't he be like a deaf person?
He kind of only halfway knows how to form the words without, repeating the different parts of the words as he does. Like for Z space, he's like. It makes faster than light travel is possible. Bull, possible. The way he plays with sounds. But see, I feel like, okay, so it makes sense when he's in human morph that he knows English because just like with any animal, when you're a dog, you know how to bark and you know what different barks mean. As a bird, the tisser, seer. Yeah, seer. So I always said tisser, but it's seer. They know how to do that. So it makes sense that a human would know, but it's even more mysterious that in thought speech, it's all human. It's all human language, English.
So that brings up another one of my wonderments. Did Axe somehow possibly acquire any of their memories as part of that DNA transfer?
That's a good one.
Because if he's absorbing their language intellect, which is going to be unique for every human because it's based off of their experiences up until that point in their life.
Yeah.
Some people are just monolingual. A lot of people are multilingual in either just 2 or 3, but some people know like 15 languages fluently. And I mean, a lot of them are very similar, I'm sure, because there's a lot of like Latin languages that are
same base
spelling variations off from one another, but there's so much variation just in the amount of languages that we have available in the world. Like, why would he know English?
And also, the memories thing. Like, does he hold certain memories of like emotion, and is his psyche as a human just as mixed bag as the actual like physical part of it?
Exactly. Because like obviously he gives into the hankering for junk food.
See, that seems to me to be the overwhelming
like
sense of taste.
Was that the Andalite version of the morph taking over?
Yeah,
when he's just running amok in the mall.
He's dealing with this like he's experiencing for the first time the human urge to eat.
Yeah,
we probably all get that. If we like, imagine if we didn't have food all the time and you could only eat sometimes, then I bet, like, if you can imagine a human that has never had access to food all the time, they'd probably go crazy every time they got that because that urge to eat just kicks in.
That reminds me of there's a scene in Dragon Ball Super Broly, completely off topic, but he's
the world's only TBZ podcast.
Yeah, super. Okay, get it right. But there's a scene where he's given food like as we would think of it for the first time, whereas all he's been eating is like this putrid bug juice all of his life.
Gross.
That's like is almost too terrible to even smell, much less eat. But that's like the first thing he ever ate. Whenever he crash landed on the planet, got attacked, he killed them because he's a fucking Broly, and starts eating their juice. And so that's like all he knows. And then like whenever he finally gets pulled over to Earth by Frieza, he's sitting there chilling with Chile, and she gives him this like food bar, basically like a cereal bar or something like that, or an energy bar, and he takes a bite of it and like almost instantaneously after his first bite, he's just like shoves the whole thing in his mouth, Scooby-Doo style, and is like looking for more, tearing the bag to shreds, just like a dog would or something, you know.
So they hit on to a similar thing. There you go. I think we just underestimate the sense of taste.
We probably do.
You know? Yeah. He never mentioned smell, though.
He does.
He does mention smell?
He says later on
they're tied in.
Yeah, they're related.
Yeah, that was the sense of taste and the sense of smell seem to be related somehow. This is all in the mall. Where they escape by, let's see, they run across the street from the mall into a grocery store, right? Mm-hmm. And then luckily are able to somehow clear it, have enough clear space and not enough witnesses to acquire the lobsters and then kind of like put each other in the lobster tank.
Yeah.
You know?
That was the weirdest part, was like they had to strip down, and there was a little bit of a connectivity issue there for me, because like they stuff all their stuff into a trash can again, but there's no point in the book after that, because I went back and I like meticulously reread that spot to make sure. There's no point after they mention that where they actually talk about going back and being able to retrieve from there, because you would think either one, there might already be security cameras by this point that would have seen them, and of course the controllers are going to want that footage, you know, yada yada. But apparently they don't exist in these books yet.
Yeah, I didn't think about cameras in the grocery store capturing their
you know, like that seems like a common thing. Like nobody even thinks about that otherwise, because it's so like implanted in our memories that okay, there's a camera basically everywhere watching you.
To be fair, I worked at a movie store like, what was it, like 12 years ago or something like that, and our security system was really bad.
Movie trading company?
This was actually Blockbuster.
Blockbuster?
Yeah, when I worked at Blockbuster. Movie trading company actually had a pretty good digital system. Yeah, I did. And like, yeah, the footage back there was like, it was all on like tape itself, VHS tape. And so you would play back and sometimes it wouldn't record.
Be kind, rewind.
Exactly. But like, I feel like, of course, maybe they're not giving us all the details either. Did you ever think about this? Maybe there's this like entire storyline that we don't know because they have to hide so much as Animorphs. They can't tell us their last name. They probably like switch around the locations. Like maybe the grocery store across the street wasn't actually a grocery store. Maybe it was like a warehouse where they stock food and they had to kill somebody and break in, and like
they've been doing some dragnet shit the whole time.
Yeah. What if it's like worse and more hardcore than we even know of?
I'm hoping that's what the graphic novel finally explores a little bit for us, is like alters just enough of it. Like, I want them to finally get their damn uniforms, their uniform spandex, so they can go.
Marco's pushing for that.
Yeah, dude.
He won't let that one go. That would be cool. They're like he says, they're like the Fantastic Four or some kind of like superhero team.
Or
And then at the beginning, would you have done what Marco had done, where at the beginning he sees an old man getting robbed by two guys in an alleyway, and then he actually morphs to gorilla, which is like honorable from a hero standpoint, but also very exposing. Like, what would you do? Would you draw a limit on how you morph, or would you just go around saving everybody like a vigilante? Which doesn't seem like a very Marco thing to do, but he did that.
Right, yeah. I guess it would kind of have to depend on the situation. I think he just happened to be in the right place at the right time and under the right circumstances to be able to do it. But he also is pretty smart about that kind of stuff. If there hadn't have been the ability to go duck behind a dumpster shadow, then I don't think he would have done it. I think if he knew that he was going to be exposed, he would have had to either he would have resolved to go and find a spot to do it, like have to hope that they don't fuck him up before then, and then end up coming back and maybe saving the day still. But it sounded like he was just barely there in the nick of time already, because they were about ready to kick the guy's butt. Yeah. I love the way they describe all of Marco's battles in this book because it's like they just really drive home the overwhelming strength of the gorilla. Like the way they talk about him whacking the dude in the chest that just sliced him with a blade, and he literally flew. He had to repeat, no, he flew all the way back to the wall and collapsed. Yeah.
Does he get a dumpster and just like throws the dumpster around?
Yeah, like picks up a dumpster and throws it like it's a fucking basketball.
Did he get shot in that scene?
He almost does. Okay. He gets shot at, but I don't think he ever actually gets hit by the bullet. Yeah. At least it doesn't get described that way. Maybe that's another one of the the cover-ups that they do. Yeah. But God, that would be so weird. Now I want to see a fanfic about that. All the expanded animal.
Yeah, the stuff that really happened behind the scenes. So here's what really happened that we couldn't tell you about. Here's all the people. Marco actually killed both of those robbers in the opening scene. Yeah, he's actually wanted. A gorilla is wanted for murder. And then the guy, that would explain why the guy he's saving got so afraid of him, you know?
Right, yeah.
I feel like I would use that skill very rarely because if you get caught, then obviously there's, less room for there's less Animorphs to fight Yeerks.
Yeah.
You know? So you got to have that.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's also part of the circumstances I would be concerned with, like he was talking about, like, I'd love to be able to tell you my address. That would mean that I don't have any enemies to worry about anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if he didn't have any enemies, like if they get to a point later on, that was another thing I thought of is when they're taking off their clothes, like all these times when they're out in the throes of it, like this round, I guess they don't have any wallets or IDs or anything like that they ever carry on them.
Probably not.
Since they had Axe, I could see why they wouldn't have done it then, and they only had cash on them for the expenses they were expecting. But
Tobias has a little Timex watch.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they wouldn't need. I don't think they needed that this round because they had Axe, who had the internal.
Oh, right. Yeah, the internal timer. Yeah,
so it was a very short-lived Timex span for. Speaking of Timex,
hey, dude, that's badass. Did you get that for your B-Day?
I did.
That's
indeed.
really cool. I noticed that.
Shout out to Tara Hart for getting that for me.
That's awesome.
The hearts, her and Rob.
It looks indestructible. It looks like a watch you can put underwater. It looks like a watch you can bang around a little bit. It's not going to break.
It is. It's a G-Shock. They're pretty tough.
That's awesome.
I've got more things that I want to talk about, like the beginning of that mall scene where they're coming in, and it's just like back to back to back to back name drops of all these different corporations
that are just closed.
Radio
now.
Shack, Shears, Circuit City. Like I wonder if they had endorsement deals, like KA and/or Scholastic had some kind of endorsement deals with.
Probably
any of those.
not, just because every mall had those. Like you said, Sears was in every mall. Sharper Image. Do they mention Sharper Image?
I don't think so.
I don't think that might have been
a staple
too.
Out here.
Yeah, but Radio Shack, like Circuit City, all these places were.
Because she mentions other ones that I didn't quite recognize, like the store that she was saying Rachel would come from, like what was it, like the Limited or something like that?
The Limited, that's a store.
I remember Limited 2. Maybe
I think Limited 2
Limited
came from Limited. Yes, yeah, and then I think they even had another offshoot in the Limited saga. But let's be honest, they're probably all closed now. It is so funny how much the world has changed. Like,
maybe it's because their stock was too limited.
There you go. There you go. That's why they got their name. There's the one part in, let's see what chapters it is. In chapter 6 in the mall where the way Marco decides to distract everybody, he goes, "There's a bomb!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. "Bomb! What?" Jake demanded. "There's a bomb! A bomb in the store! Run! Everyone out! A bomb!"
Yeah, in the grocery store.
That's definitely a pre 9/11 strategy, Okay, right? So that's how they cleared out. That's how they cleared out the
bomb.
Yeah, bomb. Like in Meet the Parents. Yeah, that's something that didn't age well. Something that was definitely from another time. But then it was hilarious to me how this poor lady who just goes to the grocery store and buys 3 lobsters and brings them home and
Most
puts them.
Existential crisis she'll have in her entire life.
Right. She's like making dinner for her family. She's a hardworking mom. She's
just
like
paid all that money for 6 fresh lobster too.
How much is 6 lobsters? What is that like? $8 a pop, something like that. Maybe even more.
Easily more. Yeah, I would think they're probably somewhere between $10 and $15 a pound, depending on which market you go to.
A couple pounds each.
Especially, it sounds like they, quote unquote, live next to the coast.
Yes.
At least from the descriptions that they keep talking about.
Coast and the mountains. Pretty much any geological,
So a lot of those cities tend to have better seafood prices. So
it's a little closer.
Maybe maybe
but
a
either
little bit
way,
closer to 8.
she worked hard. It's a special occasion, probably. Maybe her husband's birthday. She's waiting for him to get home. So she's just cooking her dinner, and then all of a sudden, these lobsters start sprouting arms and legs and lips and like
looking
stalk
like the
eyes.
Quiznos commercial or something.
It says, "My human hearing returned with shocking effect," and all they heard was, "Ah!" Someone was screaming uncontrollably. My legs were back. I stood up. I looked and saw a woman, sort of pretty, except for the fact that her eyes were wide with terror and she was screaming. It's like, poor lady, dude.
Dude, for real.
She's in a fear for the rest of her life. Probably never going to eat lobster.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll stay away from shellfish for the rest of her life.
Don't they like tell her it's a dream? Like, listen, no one's going to believe you.
Like they have Jedi mind powers or something. This is all a dream. Besides, no one will believe you anyway. The very last page, the last thing that Marco says as they walk out the door, it makes me wonder if eventually all of the Animorphs are going to end up having to become vegan because of the stuff that they do. Because he's like, why don't you take the rest of our buddies there and let them back off at the coast?
Because they know what it's like, you know?
Yeah. Please don't eat us.
Then we get a little peek around chapter 9 and 10 into Marco's home life. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's like, of course, the clown of the group is also the one with definitely the saddest home life.
Yep.
You get to hear about his sad dad, how his dad just sits there in the living room all night, kind of watching TV, not really registered in this like dark depression, you know. And they actually describe him. I remember relating to this because I'm half Mexican, and they hint that that Marco's mom was Hispanic, and then Marco's dad, it says, was paler than him. And so you would think that like he's like half Mexican too, or half Hispanic, and so always kind of related to him.
On 58, it says, my dad looks very different from me. For one thing, he's pretty tall. He's paler than me too, and has light brown eyes. My mom was Hispanic, very dark hair and eyes. Everyone says I look like her. Yeah. I know it's true because sometimes when he's thinking about her, my dad will just gaze over and stare at me like I'm not even there, like I'm a picture of someone else.
Sad dad.
Sad dad vibes.
And of course they have
Poor
the 2
Marco's
years.
dad. I don't think we've gotten a name for him yet.
Nah, they probably don't give it to him. They probably don't give it to us. It's these things they have to keep private. You know?
Yeah, we get Tom, and that's about the most. I think we did get Rachel's sisters' names.
That would make sense. But who knows if they're real or not?
Yeah, right.
If they're the actual names. Who knows if Rachel is even her real name?
No, yeah, that's one of the points they drive home, especially Marco at the beginning of this book. My name, and I'd like to tell you that my name is Marco Vasquez or Saldana or whatever. He goes through like a whole list. I think he ends up on, what was it, McCain. Marco McCain. I was like, thumbs up, man. Yeah.
But it's been 2 years since Marco's mom disappeared, and they explain it this way. They say that, of course, we find out what happened towards the end of this book, but it says she had taken the boat out of the marina. She'd sailed it out into rough sea. No one knew why. She'd never done it before. We'd always gone out together, the three of us, so they had a boat. They must have been doing well.
Yeah,
the dad was doing like computer science type stuff.
Yeah, he was like a scientist. He was a
engineer.
Something
like that.
He was making bank. They had a big ass house over there near Jake. Yeah, they had a nice car. They obviously had access to the boat.
Yeah.
And
then the mom disappears. It says that basically she went out on the ocean, and there was no sign except for a frayed safety rope. Never found the body. And the Coast Guard said it was not unusual. The ocean is a big place. So that's the story that they're dealing with. And in the timeline of the book, it comes up that the 2-year anniversary of his mom's death is coming up.
Seems like they were in the throes of living their life and not worrying about the future yet, because you would think with that much money floating around, he's obviously got some kind of a nest egg started up that maybe that's how they were able to survive with him not working for as long as he did. And then
I feel like they probably got some kind of life insurance payout. You know,
that's another aspect. I didn't even think about that. Wonder if she did, because they never mentioned that.
Because he's having a hard time holding down a job. He's like a janitor at a school at one point.
Yeah, I love all the foreshadow that they give in this book leading up to that finale of the reveal of her being Visor 1. Because there's like on page 68 and 86, there's like on 68, there's this call out where he is thinking about his mom and just immediately thinks of space. Like he's describing how she had left. Here, I'll go to the page and read it.
Straight from the source, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. They never found the body. The Coast Guard guy said that was not unusual. The ocean is a big place. So is space, a voice in my head said. Somewhere very, very far away, a mother and a father wondered what had become of their children. He's talking about Axe's parents at that point. Like,
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, they tie it in. And that's where he actually, because he told Jake, he was like, I'm quitting, dude. I'm quitting. My 2-year anniversary, my mom's death is coming up. I cannot leave my dad here alone. I'm out. Yeah, that's what he said. And then Jake didn't tell anyone else. Jake kind of kept it. Do you think Jake knew he was going to come around and come back? And that's why Jake didn't like tell anybody?
No, I think Jake was just trying to be respectful of him as a friend, but then accepted why he obviously had chosen to stay at that point, because now he had a reason to fight.
That's kind of where he comes to that realization. He's like, yeah, there's somewhere Axe's parents are wondering where
dog
he is.
in the fight was what I was trying to say.
Dog in the fight, there you go.
Or a mom in the fight, I guess.
Yeah, so that's...
You got a bitch in the fight one way or the other.
Yeah, that's a cool foreshadowing thing where it's like, you know, he immediately thinks of space. And then this is the part that stuck to me the most. I remember being legit scared of this whenever I was a kid, whenever they morphed into ants.
Oh, yeah,
and they completely were lost. It's like...
They're getting torn to shreds.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's just one terrifying line where he's like, suddenly I realized that there had been something, a sound. Yes, not a smell, not a smell, not a feel. He's like, you are humans, Tobias is yelling at them in Antmorph. You're humans, listen to me. You are not ants. Fight it, fight it. Tobias later said it scared him half to death, and he thought I was being killed, but that wasn't it at all. I had been reborn.
Yeah, when they're talking about having completely lost any sense of individuality or self.
Yeah.
The ant brain was just a hive mind, part of a whole. Even Axe had struggled with it, and he was just like terrified.
He's like, what are these animals?
Terror in his thought speech.
And the part where Marco's like taking a shower later after they get like completely wrapped up, sucked up into this ant brain, and he's in the shower later that night, and he still has an ant head like attached onto his side.
Yeah, and on his waist.
Yeah, that's parts like that. That scarred them too, because they'll refer to this throughout the series. Like, dude, you remember those ant morphs? I don't think they ever morphed ants again. They would morph other bugs, but not ants.
Yeah, I think they end up doing like a fly, but I can't remember distinctly any more ants. No.
Maybe at some point.
Maybe.
But I do know that there were times in the future where they'd be like, well, you know, an ant morph would work well, but then they're like, no. You remember what happened last time. I wonder what Tobias feels like just kind of watching them and knowing like, oh, I don't have to experience that, but, you know, I have to still kind of do my own part and kind of watch over everybody. Good thing he was there, because he was able to track them and like tell them where to go as ants when they stole the Z-Space transponder, which they were able to carry out, luckily.
Just barely.
And this is right
Thank God they had gotten just past the concrete whenever they got into the trouble with the ants. Otherwise,
Do you think they were still in the tunnel? They were like in the tunnels when they were morphing, right? They were still underground, like with the ground closing around them.
Yeah. So I feel like they were probably only maybe 3 inches or something, you know, like 6. However deep the foundation has to go, wherever the crack was along that foundation that they were able to get in through.
It's funny that like this entire epic battle scene is happening, and then you imagine like in a movie, somebody's just walking by on the sidewalk, you know, not realizing anything. Just like
I guess hopefully it occurred in the backyard of the property, and they didn't have a chain link fence apparently.
Couldn't go under it. We find out in this book that there are 47 Viscers.
47 from the Council of 13.
That's right. And Axe says, yes, Viscer 1 more powerful than Viscer 3, just the way Viscer 3 is more powerful than Viscer 4. There are 47 Viscers in the Uric Empire, or so we believe.
And you would think after all of these experiences that they have in all these morphs, especially this super traumatic one with the ants, they would begin to maybe do a little bit more research onto the animals they're intending to morph before they do that. You know?
Lack of internet. I mean, they did have the excuse in the last book where they're like, we were at home reading about dolphins on the internet.
Yeah.
You know, but like, see, nobody
probably
ever
still
thought
28K
about this
modem at that point.
Yeah. It is scary whenever around page 91. See, I read this one on a Kindle, and I much prefer the physical book. But around page 91, whenever they're coming out of the ant morph, he's like, we were growing. I couldn't breathe. Sand blocked the air. Pressure. Then the ground around me opened up. Yeah, so they were underground. I swear it was like climbing out of a grave.
Yeah.
All that imagery, you know. The air, fresh, clean air. I exploded up out of the sand. It's like, man, they escaped, you know. They're being reborn, dude.
And then Rachel both stomping the ground back into place and killing ants.
Of course, Rachel is like, I'm going to get every last one of them. Yeah.
Like I do that when they bite me as a human. I can imagine being torn in half by one. I would even more so. I'm using a magnifying glass every chance I get, you little piece of shit.
He says it's not easy to ignore the memory of your leg being ripped off, of being dismembered and torn apart. Man, oh man.
Also, when they start going into this morph, the way he's describing Cassie going, there's a moment where he's describing her body and skin transforming from regular human skin to sleek, hard, almost plastic-like skin, like representative of the ant's skin. It would be cool if they would actually, especially Cassie, and I wonder why they don't ever think to do this, really, if they started just like hardcore practicing morphing so that they could get to a point where they can, like, say, focus on just a particular attribute of that morph and get, like, say, a full human body or as close to it as they can, just completely covered in that ant-like exoskeleton, you know?
To kind of hold it there between morphs.
Right, yeah. And, like, what would that take? Because I think there's going to be later on revealed some way larger extents of morphing capabilities that make that seem possible.
And who knows if that would transfer to every human, you know, because it seems like Andalites, since it's in their nature, you know, they're able to do these technology, like crazy morphin stuff, but who knows if humans would be able to do that too.
Exactly.
Marco says he's quitting. And then Jake says, you're right, you've done enough. You've done 1,000,000 times more than enough. It's been too many close calls, you know. At one point, Marco says, bet I could beat your butt, like in terms, oh yeah, that's right. So like you have a tiger and a gorilla, and then Marco is the gorilla, Jake is the tiger, and they talk at one point about like, oh, I bet I could beat you up. And then Jake's like, yeah, monkey boy, who do you think would win that fight? Tiger or gorilla with human brains.
Human intelligence incorporated. It would really be a matter of, I think, setting to a degree, like where they're doing all the fighting. Like if they're out on a blank parking lot or something like that.
Let's say that. Yeah, let's say a big area of asphalt, like 50 yards by 50 yards area of asphalt. They both know the fight's coming. 1, 2, 3, go.
That's going to be the gorilla. Because I think at that point it's going to have better overall use of the terrain. Even though the tiger likes to do long sprints on little flat patches of land, I think ultimately it's going to need more varied terrain in order to be able to get the upper hand on the gorilla, just because, I mean, as fast as the cat is, he'll probably get in a good few swipes, but as fast and as powerful as it is, it's not going to be able to put enough of a stun on the gorilla. It's going to be like a midweight fighting a heavyweight. And like it's going to have to rely still much more on its agility than anything. And as soon as that gorilla grabs it, it's kind of game over.
Because a gorilla can like pick it up and smash it on the ground.
Oh yeah, grab it by the tail and whee back over his head or whatever.
See, but the tiger has super sharp teeth and super powerful claws.
It does.
So it could be fast. Yeah, I guess you're right. It could be fast and like injure the gorilla. But once the gorilla gets a hold of it, it's like Strangle City, you know, or just like Marco handled that dumpster in the robbers.
Dude, or like the Hork-Bajir when they're on the mothership and he just punches it in the gut so hard that it flies up and knocks him out on the ceiling.
Yeah.
It's like I put everything I had, all of the gorilla strength into that punch.
Of course, that's what happens next whenever they think they're setting a trap for the Yeerks by, you know, sitting out this transponder, this distress signal, but they get ambushed. Yeah. And it's actually the Yeerks who have set a trap on them. How did that happen? How did they catch on that the Yeerks were going to be there?
They used an antiquated signal.
Right.
It was one that, if Axe remembered it, obviously by now, it's one that he was taught, and so it's been changed. You'd think he'd think of that, but...
And I really liked the visuals and the hugeness of how they get like taken up into space, you know, and they're describing this huge ship that they're on, because the Blade ship takes them to the Yeerk mothership. Isn't that what they were on?
Mm-hmm. And they intentionally show them. Axe is like, normally it would be invisible. They use a Z-Space cloaking device that makes it invisible to your sense of visual perception, but he's showing it to us to intimidate us, to scare us.
And then they let them see Earth. And it's cool how they describe it in chapter 20 when Marco's like, below us, blue and white, so beautiful it brought tears to your eyes, was Earth. Suns sparkled off the ocean. Clouds swirled over the Gulf of Mexico. Ooh, is that a clue as to where they are? I guess they would be over Mexico.
They just happen to be above North America.
North America,
is what, and I feel like that's been pretty heavily implied that that's kind of where they're probably at.
Then they say, through the eyes of the animals of Earth, but with the minds of human beings, we looked down at our planet. Our planet, for now at least, for a little while longer. So like, there's always the essence of mortality weighing over these young teenagers, you know, like she really writes it in there.
Dark because of that sometimes.
I like the, you know, whenever they escape. Well, first of all, let's go on to this. So Marco's just sitting there, or standing there at first in gorilla morph, and then here comes Visser 1 up on the Yerk mothership, walking down off the ramp, and then he sees who? His mother is Visser 1. His mother has been taken over. She's a human controller. She's not dead. She hasn't been dead for these last 2 years. And his mother is Visser 1.
And it almost seems like if you didn't already know it, you could pretty easily kind of surmise it. Like you get that inclination through most
She's been planting seeds, dropping seeds.
Like even on page 120 where she's like, Visser 3 was right. We were fools. This wasn't even my fight, I thought. Not really. This wasn't my time to die. I guess I wanted to feel angry, but what I felt was numb as I trooped into the blade ship with the others. You know, like I wasn't really there almost. I was past feeling anything, I guess. I just kept thinking, it's happening. It's finally really happening. The next day was Sunday. My dad would go to my mom's grave alone. It would be a while before he would admit that I, too, was gone. Just like when my mom died, there would never be a body. Wow. Just like my mom.
So sad, dude. Oh, yeah, there'd be a body just like mom. That's so sad, dude.
Repeating just like my mom. Almost just like alluding already.
Never be a body, wink, wink.
Or again, not already. This is page 120. That's near the end of the book.
He's got a good point there, man. Like, his dad would never know what happened to either the love of his life, his wife, or his child.
Would he even stick around?
I would. Do you think Marco ever thought about telling his dad what was going on?
Once he learns? Yeah. I think there is a couple like of scenes later on where he'll end up like wrestling with. He talks about wrestling with
Jake as a tiger. Oh no, yeah. You know what they should do is leave secret notes somewhere in like
a time capsule type of idea.
Like I don't know how they. I mean, that would be pretty risky, I guess, but like, or just risk it. You know, maybe that
risk it for the biscuit, baby.
Yeah, risk it for the biscuit, exactly. So, like, what happens is Marco sees it's his mom, and then Jake recognizes her right away after they describe Marco as a gorilla, like just falling on his butt, just like sitting down. He's like, it would have been funny if it wasn't so not funny.
It makes me think of Smash because there's a move that Donkey does where he just kind of like butt plops.
Yeah, but then Jake's like, Marco, don't say anything, don't do anything. Do you hear me? So Jake had recognized her too. And he's like, dude, hold it together, Marco. You can't like let everybody know. It's going to release us. And they have a good ploy of not talking to Visser 3 or not talking to anybody. I think
poor Axe.
Yeah, Axe actually comes out and says something, and he wants to say Yerk. Yeah, he wants to say, but you can like hear the hatred in that. Yeah. You know what? I was thinking about thought speech whenever you mentioned earlier, like how do they know English? I think maybe thought speech is just universal speech. Like it just automatically translates into whatever language.
Could be.
Know? Do Texans talk? Yeah, they talk because they have that hissy.
It's like a screeching.
Yeah.
Type of
terrifying. Texans are disgusting.
Yeah.
It must
I love how she just barrels through them as an elephant. And then they're escaping to the escape pods.
Well, before that, Marco brings up a point after he finds out that it's his mom that I was like, oh my God, that must be a lot to deal with. He's like, when she'd come to my bedroom to say goodnight, had that been a Yerk all along, dude, just playing a part?
At me.
He's like, that must have been hard for him to realize that his mom had been a controller for at least part of his life. And he doesn't even really know like how long.
Like, yeah, now it's going to torment him. He's going to sit there and try and think of every little like behavioral thing that he can think of that she would have done. Like, was there any clear point at which she stopped doing stuff that I remember her doing all my life, kind of thing.
Man, I'm ready to get more into the story because eventually we're going to get some of these answers that we may be wondering about Marco's mom. I liked how Visser 1's Hork-Bajir are way classier than Visser 3's Hork-Bajir Because like this, there's that one part where
they're like beefier, stockier, prime.
Yeah, it says this one sounds like he'd been educated at Harvard, and he's like, you can escape like right down there. Just go down the hallway, and there's where you can find the escape pod. You know, he's like, this one sounds like he went to Harvard. So you got like Visser 3, Visser 1. They're just at odds with each other, and they escape. They escape because of Yeerk alien politics, and that's where we find out that there's this line between Visser 1 and Visser 3. Mm-hmm. And Visser 2, who is that? We may find out later.
Right. That's one of the things I always thought was funny is like they spend all this time worrying about Visser 1 and Visser 3. You hardly ever hear about any of the other.
Yeah.
Much less finally delving into the Council of 13.
Yeah.
Like, let's get up the ranks. Let's figure out who's like Grand Master or whatever y'all have got.
That's got to be hard to. KA created this entire universe, and it's like, you know, where do they? Where do you explain? What do you just kind of leave open? I'm super excited to get my Andalite Chronicles.
I want to know if she's got some kind of a correlative society that she was modeling that aspect of the Yeerks off of, where each leader has like their own clan, their own army. You know, almost like Vikings. Like they're all Vikings, they're all Norsemen or whatever. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they're ready to throw down on each other just as much as they are their common enemy.
Well, in her follow-up series, Everworld, which is completely unrelated to the Animorphs universe, I mean, they're full of Vikings. So maybe she did. Maybe she did have some.
Yeah.
Maybe she did have some correlation there between the two, because it's interesting you mentioned that. You know, you say like Vikings, and then there's a ton of Vikings in Everworld. That's kind of what it's all about.
That's crazy.
But then they
read that one.
They get out. Marco has this good line towards the end where he says, "It's better to laugh than to cry, don't you think? Even when the world is scary and sad, especially when the world is scary and sad. That's
Talking
when
with
you
his
need
dad.
to laugh." Yeah, is that the last scene?
I think so. Yeah,
that's a cool scene when they're at the graveside.
Yeah, because they're like finally kind of in front of the gravesite talking about, and in the middle of it, he's like, "I can whoop your butt at video games still, though," because he's talking about he's going to try and get his job back and
get back on the computer.
See how much he's forgetting. He's like, "I forgot more about computers than you ever knew." Get out of here, kid. Which is probably true. He probably, like my dad, was one that grew up in the beginning stages of programming for computers and was like using giant punch cards and stuff to actually program things.
Yeah, my dad was into computers too, man. As a whenever they were first like starting, you know, the first wave of computer nerds and computer engineers. But that's where we're at with book 5. Now we know Marco's mom is a human controller who is also Visser 1. We know that Axe I don't know if they have a specific scene for it. They kind of did, like where Axe says, "Okay, I'm here. I'm not going to try to go back home. This is my, I'm with you guys now." I mean, is there a scene where he relates that? Because
I feel like there kind of is, or there's something like it implied.
Something like that, because like I think he realizes that he's put everybody at risk just in this book alone.
The closest they come, and now that I know that what I'm thinking of, it's whenever they get back from the mall, he's like, he felt remorseful for having almost gotten them killed at the mall, and he was like hesitant to go on over to Chapman's and do all that. But when everybody else was like, "No, we're doing it," he was like, "All right, sweet."
Yeah. So they're into it now. Axe is there to stay. In fact, I think the next book is Axe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Book 6
starts the cycle almost anew. It ends up with him being the alteration.
Yeah.
At least I think that's what it is. Is he?
No, Rachel's 6. I think
Rachel is 6.
No. Okay. It goes Jake, Rachel, Cassie, Tobias, Marco.
No, Jake, Rachel, Tobias, Cassie,
Tobias,
Marco.
Cassie. Yeah, right. And then Jake, Rachel, Axe, Cassie, Marco, I think.
Let's see. Book.
I think they do the same pattern, except for they interchange Tobias and Axe each round.
That makes, I seem to remember something like that. Okay, Animorphs book 6 is the capture. Okay, and it is Jake. Yeah.
That's where they, like I was mentioning earlier, I think they turn into flies.
Cool. I'm ready for another Jake book. That's gonna be cool.
Oh yeah, and
I think I may have to read this one on Kindle too, but I got some coming in the mail off of eBay because I love those hard copies. eBay. That's good stuff, man. Any other last thoughts about this book? What do you think?
Man, I understand now why it hooked me so hard and why I ended up having to cut the order form out of the back of the book to
to get the others.
Yeah, like tallying up how much it would be to get the whole collection as it stood up that point.
So you're adding up with your elementary school, like remedial middle school math skills.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I'm ready for book 6. I think there was a lot of revelations in this one as we continue moving on down the series of Animorphs right here on the world's only Animorphs podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for checking this out. We'll be back next week with book 6. I am Michael.
And real quick, I invite our guests to visit a topic we addressed at the very beginning of the show today. If you can, share with us what outfits and which morphs you would have the Animorphs try and learn how to morph clothing into. Like we were talking about with Rachel becoming like Winnie the Pooh or Dumbo the elephant or Marco becoming Donkey Kong. If you can draw it, do that too. We'd love to see your artwork.
We want to see your fan art here on the world's only Animorphs podcast.
He's Michael. I'm Max. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.